What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and today we're taking a look at the FIGMA-Mitzuhara Hazuki. I don't know why I paused just now, but yeah, this is a really beautiful figure. It's a subtle figure. It's a sublime figure. It's not over the top anything. You know what I mean? Even as far as anime figures go, it's not really that like crazy of a design. It's just very subtle, very clean, and very, well designed. Comes from a game called Toshin Toshi. I think it's got dating simulator parts to it and whatnot. And I couldn't really find that much, and I was like, I don't really care about that shit. I'm not really getting into that. So either way, Figma, the people at Max Factory and Figma thought the design was nice. I think the design is nice. Many reviewers think the design is nice, or collectors, I should say. And, a handful of reviewers have reviewed it properly. I haven't really seen that many bad reviews for this figure. And it's weird because we had no frame of reference for it before it popped up. We just all saw it and we're like, damn, this is actually a pretty dope design. And I'm pretty sure that's what the sculptors were feeling when they saw that design. One of the things that I like the most about it is that they didn't overload the package with, or the figure or the release with a shitload of accessories, just to show off. It's simplistic. And there's something to be said about a design that is subtle in its presentation, in the approach to the sculpt and everything. It's subtle. She's beautiful, but they didn't overdo it. This plays more to that waifu bullshit that, hardcore anime fans are into. But as far as, me as a collector, like I've always said, I love sword and sorcery, sword and sandals type stuff, fantasy stuff, and she fits perfectly in that kind of genre. Her design shares a lot of elements that you saw on the Sword Art Online Asuna figure, but she's grown, and that's what I like about this figure, because I don't have that, whatever you want to call it, that need for my characters to look like little girls. Nah. I can deal with the anime face, but their bodies have to be, grown. And right here, we have a pretty grown character who looks like she's pretty damn confident in her abilities, just based on the design and just based on the elements of clothing. She's not wearing a lot of armor. And I think from the story, she is like the head of a school, like a martial arts school of some sort. So in my universe, she is a knight, a female knight. I put her on up there with Saber and whatnot, because like I said, she looks like a badass female that should be opposite another badass female. So anyway, I'm going to go into why I like this figure, what makes it a good figure to own, and, any problems or issues that I encountered that you should look out for. Okay, sculpt and paint. The sculpt on this figure, like I said, it's sublime. Very small, intricate detail. It's not like your SICs. It's not like Saber with all her armor. It's not like the Kamen Riders from Dragon Knight or Ryuki. It's very subtle. I mean, they did a really cool contrast with the fleshy parts versus the armor or costume parts, and it really feels like two separate, textures. You know what I'm saying? The paint job, it's freaking phenomenal, and it's real simplistic. It's the same metallic purple all over the place, and then, you got your silvers. Sorry, my chair is making noise. You got your silvers and your golds, and then the rest are just like your flesh tones and her hair color. And her flesh tone is consistent all across the board. The silver tone is the same. It's not sloppy. As far as sculpting goes, no seam lines on the sword or on the sheath. You can kind of tell that the sheath is two parts, which it should be. But, one thing about official Figmas is they're really good at hiding seam lines. If you look at a lot of the Ryuki figures, you can't even tell where the damn seam line is. So this one is no different. The eyes on this figure, they're probably a tampograph, because that's the best way to get this get a consistent, clear paint job all across all of these figures. And it's just masterfully done. Her lips, well painted. There's not a whole bunch of crap going outside of the area of the lips, and you rarely ever get slop on a Figma. Actually, none of my Figmas have any slop. So, this is no different, and I'm really happy about it because she looks phenomenal. The hair, consistent black color with like some dry brushing in there somewhere, airbrushing. It's just a beautiful, beautiful figure. The sculpt itself, of course, lends to the articulation. They made sure that you have enough parts to pull off poses that, I guess what you would assume a fighter of her caliber should be able to do. Poses that look like she knows what she's doing, poses that look dynamic, poses that when light hits it the right way, which is something that a lot of reviewers ignore when they're talking about this, because they don't actually take pictures. They just light the figure and then, put it on their carousel and just show you it from all angles. One thing is that you have to light the figures a certain way when you're taking your photographs. I'm not doing like super intense lighting, super like high-end lighting, but what I'm saying is that shadows fall a certain way to accentuate certain things. And the figure is sculpted as such to, play off of that, to allow you to play off of that. It seems like wherever I put the light on this figure, for the most part, she still looks phenomenal. The cleavage gets the right amount of light in most places, most times. But it's not like the focal point, you know what I'm saying? She just is a well done figure. It's something that you don't see often enough, and I say this all the time with our American figures, with the exception of a handful of companies. But in this case, they did a great job. She looks good, she looks feminine, but when you put her in her battle poses, she looks tough enough to, go up against crazy shit like this knight you see here. I was impressed with this just from the pictures I saw, and this is what made me want to get this figure. I didn't have, I didn't have any issues with the look of the figure. I didn't have any issues with the fact that she is she's more along the lines of typical anime chicks. But there's another dimension to the design, like I was telling you, the sublime nature of this design, or the subtle nature of the design, that even though there's boobs and, legs, it's not too overly, in my opinion, it's not overly, it's not oversexed. You know what I'm saying? And that's a lot of anime-related characters. She just actually just comes off more along the lines of, what you typically find in your fantasy stuff. And I know a lot of people complain about fantasy characters, especially women, not having the same level of design intricacies that the male figures have. They usually have way less armor and all that stuff. She just seems like she's badass enough to not need it, Now, I'm not trying to make an excuse for the fact that she is kind of, a sexy female knight. But, given what we have to work with, she looks like that is the context of this costume, And I don't have a problem with it. When I put her up next to some of my other characters, she doesn't look bad. I have no issues with that. And she's, a little taller than my average Figma figures, especially the females, which I like. So, she's an adult. And she holds her sword like a boss, and I love that. It makes me happy when I pose her in whatever poses. She just looks like she knows what she's doing. And her expressions, that's the other thing. The expressions are not too far in one direction or too far in the other direction. She has two faces, which I'll get to in the accessory section, which is coming up next. She has the straight face, and then she has the kind of light smile. And it kind of gives you an idea. I shouldn't even say kind of. It gives you a definite idea of what kind of a person she is. She's not an overly emotional character. She's not super bubbly or anything like that. And I like that contrast, It's almost like Shinon, even though Shinon has some issues. It's just overall they did a really good job. And as I said before, the paint is immaculately done. It's not a whole lot of paint, mind you, but where it is, all the lines going around her skirt, going around her stockings, on the bracelets on her arms, her earrings, everything is just well done to the point where you don't even have to worry. As you look throughout the figure, you'll see everything is masterfully done. And that's why I get Figmas. Now her accessories. She doesn't really come with that many accessories, just her hand tree, extra face, the sword, the sheath, And then I guess you could count the pieces of her cape, because the cape is articulated. It's a plastic cape, but it's one of the better ones. It kicks the shit out of the SH Figuarts ones because number one, it's made out of a fairly pliable plastic, and it's not pointy and stabby. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, like I said, you can look at them up close. The hands are all cast in white, so there's not a shitload of paint all over the place, and they're really clean. There's no seam lines. Of course, you have your Figma baggie, which I recommend you keep all your shit in there because a lot of us put our shit in like Rubbermaid containers or Ziploc bags anyway, so it's kind of awesome that they give you that. The second face is beautiful. Like I said, she's kind of got that light, kind of relieved kind of look, you know, or maybe it's like a shy smile, you know. I guess that's a better description. But masterfully done. There's no issues, no slop, no nothing. So it's a good addition. I would like more often, and this is my only, you know, nitpicky thing that I have to say, is I would like for future releases when they don't have a lot of weapons, I would like for them to come with a bunch of expressions, you know. But here's the stern face, and I love this one. I don't know why. She just looks thorough and it works. That's the one I usually use. Now, her articulation. She is a very well articulated figure. I did have issues with her thigh joints, which I'm going to go into in the nitpick and issue section, but she's very well articulated. The way that the character is posed on the box, she's supposed to be kind of knock-kneed. I stand her up straight. I prefer that look. One thing that I like about her that's not common for our figures is her legs can go straight together, and she stands very firm without her stand. I pulled up her leg a little bit so you can see where the Figma joints peg into her thigh. Besides that, you know, the bulbous back of the knees, it's not even as bad as it is on many Figmas because they're starting to use smaller joints. It's kind of like they're sculpting it in such a way that the joint actually is embedded as opposed to sticking out so much like it used to do. Her hair is even articulated, which is pretty awesome. It's really nice when they think about little things that help make the design work better. You know, when you pose her, you want to be able to move the hair, or if you happen to hold her from, you know, with your hands behind her, you don't want the hair in the way, so you can push the hair up. Or if you want to move the cape, you want to be able to get at the, you know, the cape without the hair getting in the way, and the articulation allows you to do so. All right, let's talk about articulation. We'll start from the top, work our way down. The head moves from left to right perfectly, up and down. The hair, like I said just a few minutes ago, is articulated, and it allows you to actually make her look up better when you move the hair out of the way. She looks down a great deal, which is pretty dope. Left and right, like I said, no issues. The cape, well, I'll get to the cape in a second. Her arms, they move out about that much. You can move them up a little bit more because the shoulder pads are articulated and you can get them out of the way. And then you can put the arm all the way up. You know what I'm saying? And that works perfectly. Moves up that much, which is pretty cool. You know, I really like the fact that the armor gets out the way. That's nice. But standard Figma fare with the elbows, you get more than 90 degrees. I just stopped there for the sake of. Her torso is pretty nice. Like I said earlier, the cape is articulated, and it's a small cape, but it's nicely articulated. It's very simple, and it gets out of the way easily. And it works with the sculpt, is what I like. It works. It's not like the SH Figuarts ones where they're just big and kind of annoying. Anyway, her torso, you get a perfect range of motion. You have a ball joint in there on a stem, essentially, so there's a hinge to move, you know, up and down, or forward and back, and then there's the ball joint. Then her legs, this is the part where you have to be careful. So they're on the double, it was a triple joint, because one goes up in the center, and then you've got the two ball pegs on the hips. So you get that much knee, you get a little bit of swivel at the hip, which is more anatomically correct. As you just saw, it went a little bit limp when I turned it, so you got to be careful with that. And that is one of the areas that I'm going to get into in a second. But as you can see, there's the dumbbell or barbell and it's anatomically correct. So her skirt doesn't really get in the way. But if you turn her hips too much, then it will come off of the barbell for whatever reason. And I fixed it, and then I also got an extra one in the mail from Figma. She also has a boot swivel, which is different, and then she has the ball jointed or Figma joint, foot, which is pretty dope because you get your point and you get your what do they call that, pivot, your ankle pivot. But yeah, the only issue, and I'm going to get into it, is that hip. But if you're careful, it's not even an issue. But it was weird because a lot of the reviews, they danced around it, and in a lot of them you could see that they didn't really pose the figure. Like, they opened her up and then put her in a pose, and then that was the review. So I'm going to take it a little bit further, and we're going to look at this awesome figure's one flaw, at least in my, estimation. So up in the thighs, and it could be just on mine, you know what I mean? But up in the thighs, you have a basic clamp and a ball. It's a ball socket joint, essentially. And it's a Figma joint embedded in the thigh that clamps onto that, ball joint. Now, a lot of the poses require you to turn her hips at their anatomically correct, joint. And when you do so, they pop off. So I had to have them send me new thighs that had new joints in there. I spent the time and took the joint out and put a new one in, but it still gave me a little bit of trouble. I contacted a Good Smile company, and they asked for pictures. They were extremely helpful. I asked for pictures, showed them the pictures. I even sent them the review. And then they were like, hey, we'll send you replacement parts. And they sent me new thighs all together. And that wasn't before, though. While I was waiting, I tried to replace the socket joint myself with some of the replacement parts that I got off of eBay. But all in all, that's the only issue I had. Now, as far as the bottom line goes, this is a really cool figure that will fit in perfectly with all kinds of different sword and sorcery figures. I mean, like, you don't even have to worry about the fact that she's more anime than the others are. She just, apparently, I guess, in my opinion, she looks younger. But, putting her side by side with all these different characters from my sci-fi universes, fantasy universes, whatever, she just fits, and I don't have any issues with that. I like how posable she is. She looks like some kind of sword maiden or some kind of female knight that's just badass, so she doesn't hardly wear any armor. She looks like she's someone that could fit in your Masters of the Universe collection because it's variety. She's not super buff. She looks like someone that could fit in with your knights from various, other things. I mean, I know collectors these days are so OCD, so the fact that she has a more anime face, they can't have her stand next to like a Game of Thrones figure, even though pretty much everybody's in, some kind of garb. Some kind of similar garb, I mean. Like, people have, midriff exposed. Some people have their arms exposed. Some girls have their legs exposed. If you have your Game of Thrones knights type characters, and then you also have your He-Man type characters, then you're not going too far away from the usual fantasy fare. You know what I'm saying? And she fits in, considering she's supposed to be one of your badasses. She doesn't look like the rest of the characters. So it's perfectly acceptable, and I like that. But, in the end, you're going to do whatever you want to do. So, you guys handle it how you want to handle it. In my collection, my sword and sorcery, mixture, my fantasy mixture, it kind of has huge amounts of mileage. As you can see right here, I put them all together just like you see in the RPGs that we all grew up playing. You know what I mean? So I'm not limited with posing options or how I'm going to display my characters. So if you have that kind of a view, then you're going to love this character. I mean, she's awesome. If you just love good looking figures, you're going to love this figure. And if you love cool looking female characters, get them. I mean, Figma is all about the cool looking female characters, so there you go. So anyway, this has been my look at the FIGMA-Mitzuhara Hazuki. She's a dope figure. She kind of came out of nowhere, and I think it's kind of a design that was worth the attention. You know what I'm saying? It's not every day that we get a sublime design, a subtle, badass, but sexy design that, you know, it actually works completely. You know what I mean? It translates perfectly from, you know, whatever the two-dimensional space might be to 3 dimensions as an action figure. So this one is worth a look, you know, worth a purchase. I don't know if she's that expensive right now. I'm assuming, like most Figmas, her price has shot up over the last couple months. But if you can find her for a reasonable price, get her. I got her for 35 bucks on Amazon. So I think it's worth every penny. So anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I guess I will catch you on the next video. Peace outside.